Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Welcome, everyone, to the Wednesday evening segment of The Outer Realm with myself and Amelia. We are broadcasting on United Public Radio Network 105.3 FM from beautiful city of New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folger's Coffee who have been on our journey since the very beginning. So we want to send them a big thank you and a whole lot of love. And thank you. We appreciate you so much. We also want to thank our other sponsor, Dr. Snick, aka the Sonic Surgeon, Justin Snicker, for his sponsorship of his amazing voice and amazing music for our intro and our outro. For those interested, he is an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found anywhere that good music can be found, such as Bandcamp, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon. So go check him out. You will love his stuff. We are doing a pre-record this afternoon. For those of you lucky to catch it on our Outer Realm YouTube in advance, we are welcoming back the return of Charles Christian, who is all the way from the UK. So it is evening time for him right now. And he's going to be picking up where he left off from his last segment, touching a little bit more on folklore and traditions of yesteryear, so to speak. And tonight, of course, Amelia and I are going to be manning the fort in chat, as we always do on our pre-records. And we'll make sure your comments do come up on the screen because it will be airing live everywhere else. And if you enjoy the segments and you're liking what you're seeing and hearing, please subscribe to whatever platform you're listening to, whether it's the Outer Realm YouTube, whether it's our network YouTube pages, UFO Paranormal Radio, International Public Radio, and UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. Definitely subscribe. It really helps us a lot. And we are so very appreciative. And how are you, Amelia?
I'm okay. How are you? I think you missed a page. Just saying.
Did I miss a page?
No, I'm being sarcastic. The next one Joe decides to open. Yeah, no, I'm being sarcastic.
Oh yeah, well, so far so good.
Pretty much you can go anywhere and hear us, really, especially on your platforms for streaming and archives. We are everywhere.
Yes,
that's why we don't name all 200 of them.
I know. Well, we'll do that. Yeah, that'll be tonight. You know, regular spots. The guys can find that on Facebook.
Yeah. Which is tonight if you're listening. You know.
Yeah, for sure. So I have another commercial. I have two. Dolly Saffron sent in two gorgeous commercials. I know, and we're gonna play one now. We're gonna play one after. They're very, very short, and I love it. So we'll play number one first. So if you guys are ready, we're gonna go right now. This is for you, Dolly, and you Folgers.
The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. Good morning.
Good morning. I love it.
Feels like morning. We're almost there.
I need to send you a Canadian cup, but that's okay. Good morning.
That's okay. We are streaming out of New Orleans, so of course.
So I'm teasing. I'm going to send her a Canadian flag cup. You have to get me her address. I'm going to send that to her.
There we go. She's in the middle of a move, so it will be sometime coming in the next few weeks.
I love it.
So we've got Charles Christian. We might want to. I've sent him off the link, so we may want to
give a brief, since we've had him on before, and he was such a joy and so full of so much information. But of course, we had to have him back. Charles Christian is an English barrister and Reuters correspondent turned writer, podcaster. Wow. It's early for me. Award-winning tech journalist and sometimes werewolf hunter. He now writes, talks, and makes videos mainly about folklore, urban myths, history, and the weird. And yes, an English Fleet Street newspaper once did commission him to go on a werewolf hunt on the night of a full moon. Spoiler alert, he didn't find one, or the werewolf didn't find him. He was born a chime child with a caul, so according to legend, cannot drown at sea, but can see and talk to ghosts and fairy folk without fearing of coming to harm, allegedly. He's such a joy.
He is. We had a really great time with him on the last segment. So I love hearing about old folklore and traditions, and you find out about all the cryptids and all the old tales that go on from different parts of the world. I know when we research, or I research for the Gray Zone, we have done where we get requests to pick one country and to tell everything about that country, all the folklore, all the traditions, all the cryptos and haunted tales and UFOs. And so it allows me, I would say those are the fun episodes, because it allows me to learn so much. So to actually have somebody come on and talk about it, and it's something I haven't had to research. Somebody could tell me about
it's a treat, right?
It's great. It's great. Speaking of the man himself, hello.
Hi, Charles. Welcome back.
How are you?
Have me on again. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's
great
a
to have
pleasure. Yeah, it's always a lot of fun. I was just saying that it's always nice to have somebody come on that can tell us tales of where they're from, because usually when I'm researching, I have to do all the research. It's kind of nice to have somebody else just say, oh, and just orate that out to us. It's like, oh, that's very nice. And I didn't have to even really work hard for this one. So it's always a treat. So, it looks like it's nice and sunny out your neck of the woods.
We are having a heat wave. It is.
Yeah, here too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's 33 degrees without humidity here, so it's closer to 40.
Ooh, we're not that hot. We're not that hot. We don't do above 30 normally in the UK.
Must be nice.
But we're not used to it, so we suffer more.
Oh,
yeah. when you're over 30 and you're hitting 40 Celsius on the humidex, even a swimming pool is of no relief.
Yeah, it's
an English thing.
Water.
Yeah, it's an English thing, because I know all you people in Canada and North America have terrible winters, and we just have a little bit of snow and the whole place grinds to a halt, and we're all, oh, blizzards, oh, it's terrible.
Yeah, you'd have a hard time here.
I can only drive at 40 miles an hour. It's terrible.
It's okay. Most people here can't drive through the snow either. And it's very extremely evident in the first few snowfalls of the season.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love it. I could live, someplace. I don't mind the dampness or the rain. I don't like the snow. I think we just get to a certain age, you're just like, just your bones hurt. Enough of that now.
I suffer from migraines, so England would not, the UK would not be somewhere I could live.
We have to climatize you.
Yeah, I suffer from migraines. That would be too difficult for me.
Yeah.
Why would that affect you in England?
The barometer, the pressure.
Oh, right. The pressure.
Yeah, that's where they come from. I had a middle ear infection about 15 years ago. I never had a headache before that. And I suffer from migraines all year long.
Right.
Yeah, so I try not to. It's not a place I would love to visit it, and I would probably come during a drier time of the year.
Yeah.
It is somewhere that it's on my bucket list. I want to be there. I love England. I think it's a beautiful country.
Well, are we ready to pick up where we left off? So for anyone who may have missed the last segment, go check out the archive. It is on the YouTube channel, and it can be found on over 200 different sites, guys. Not like you're going to miss this one. And I guess just for a really quick recap, basically, how did you sort of come into pretty much being this caretaker of all of this phenomenal information, of all these tales and locations, et cetera, et cetera?
I don't know. I suppose I must have one of those brains that soaks up information. You know, do you remember there used to be a game a few years ago called Trivial Pursuits?
Yes.
It was all the rage.
I
And
really sucked at it, but yes.
really obscure facts, I know. Useful
Yes.
stuff, not so sure on, but
No.
But obscure things, they just go in there and they just collect. Yeah, I started off, I suppose, as a kid, was interested in it. My parents were all interested in it. They all talked about ghosts and mysterious occurrences and the like. And I lived in a very spooky house by the harbour in a town called Scarborough, and there were lots of ghost stories around there and lots of tales of smugglers and lots of tunnels and all sorts of stuff. And so I sort of grew up in that with that interest and read about it. And when I went to university, I went on some ghost hunting trips, very much amateurish by modern standards, but did that. And then sadly, as happens to a lot of us, the day job gets in the way, and you've got, you know,
the day job. Yes.
The day job, you've got mortgages, you've got wives, you've got
gotta buy food.
Yeah, you gotta buy food.
Gotta buy food and essentials.
Gotta
like
have something other than baked beans again. Yeah.
Right.
Standard student staple. And so it sort of all went on the back burner, and I went off and I spent most of my working life writing about technology, but I was always writing. And then I was in a position to move away from the old day job and then take up my interest again, and realized how much I'd missed it and how much I was feeling back home. And I suppose the other element is the remembering all the tales from my youth and thinking, well, there's quite a lot there, and a lot of that's never been encapsulated or written down anywhere. So I started writing, and you know, it took on from there, and on we go, onwards and upwards. Yes.
And here you are hanging with myself and Amelia.
Yes. Well, that was the plot all along.
I see. Wow, kudos to you.
As a teenager, I thought, yep.
Challenge accepted. And here you are. I love it. Of course, England is just one of those places where there's so much. I mean, there's tales of everything. You guys have everything. You've got all these amazing pieces of tradition and folklore. You have like some of the coolest cryptids and some of the like most amazing UFO stories, like, you know, Rendlesham Forest.
Yeah.
You know, like you guys have pretty cool stuff over there. So last time we touched a little bit on dragons. Yeah. And people get funky with that. So they're, because that could fall under so many different things. It could fall under, you know, just old folklore. It could fall, because I mean, there's a lot of folklore tales, you know, throughout England and Europe, and a lot of it is the basis for, you know, even King Arthur, the Pendragon, that whole bit of information. But then it could also fall under like a dimensional being. So in your world, with research on dragons, I'll leave it there because I don't know which way you want to take this, but I'll let you just take it from here.
Yeah, well, I say my interest in dragons, I suppose, stems from, hang on, I just need to just type something into a,
oh, it's pretty early there, right? 5 hours at 6:15. Yeah,
it's just gone 6. Right, yeah. I suppose my interest, because, you know, King Arthur, as you say, with the dragons. I think when I was a kid, the Sword and the Stone cartoon had first come out, and that has a spectacular dragon in it. And
well, it's a true story too. I mean, who are we kidding?
Well, exactly.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I think it would be a better way of appointing leaders of governments if they had to pull a sword out of a stone.
Oh yeah, I think 90%, 99.9 would feel that would be great.
Yeah, but I suppose what later intrigued me was the realization that dragons aren't just a Western folkloric tale. They're a universal tale. The Far East, China, Korea, Japan, they all have dragons. They all have slightly different dragons. There's a thing with their toes. I can't remember the full details, but Japanese dragons have more toes than Chinese dragons or something of that nature. But there's them. And then you go across to the Americas and you have Quetzalcoatl, who is basically it's a feathered serpent, but it's basically a flying dragon of some sort. And the American Thunderbird, which is a giant flying creature. And those are long-running tales, and they're all independent because they all arose at times when there was no connection. You know, the Japanese were talking about their dragons, and the Aztecs were talking about their dragons long before
Sumerians, I think, wasn't it? Like it really.
Yeah, it goes way back. But I mean, you know, these were people who had no contact with Europe and our legends. So where did they get it from? You know, you can tell with some stories, more recent ones, obviously they spread on the internet or whatever, and you can pick them up. But for something like that, you think, well, there must be some common factor there that runs through it. And I think, well, there's a number of thoughts. One is obviously encounters with living creatures that have been misinterpreted. The Komodo dragon is a good example, which you know, and that's something that has venomous spit, I think, of, you know, it spits out. Well, you know, that's a bit dragon-like with firing death at people. There are the saltwater crocodiles. They are huge and very scary. There are other crocodiles that were in Africa that have since become extinct or lost. But you know, tales of those, and you know, when you see medieval accounts of mysterious animals and the drawings of them and how they've been passed down, you know, some of the images of what camels and things like giraffes look like, where they've been passed down, and some say, well, it was tall and it had spots and it had this, and it looks nothing like what it does in real life. Well, you can see how dragons and large crocodiles might well go and have the same experience and be depicted as something far different to what they really were. So I think there's that element of it, that it was living creatures that were being misinterpreted, if you think. Then obviously there's the cryptozoology element. Were they hangovers? Were they creatures that have survived one way or the other over the years? I mean, you mentioned you know, the most famous cryptozoological creature. Well, that's Nessie, the Loch Ness monster, in Scotland.
Yes.
Well, that's generally thought to have been something like the descriptions, like a plesiosaur, which was Jurassic times. So we're talking millions and millions and millions of years ago. 145 million years ago, I think it was. So, you know, you're talking of something from a long, long time ago. But have they survived? Did they survive? The same with things like the Thunderbird and Quetzalcoatl. There's a picture sometimes crops up on cryptozoology sites, and it's supposedly set in the late 19th century, early 20th century in the Wild West. And there's a bunch of Westerners there, and they've got this giant pterodactyl, and they're holding it up and expanding its wings.
Yes.
And it crops up from time to time. And I mean, it's never gone any further. So I suspect it's a fake. But
yeah, because there's another one where it looks like something like a giant raven, and they're pretty much the same pose, where you have these people that are all standing there, and they've got the wingspan out, and they've got it propped up, but it's a big raven.
Yeah.
Which, there's theories on both of them, which I find are fascinating. Things were much bigger once upon a time on this planet prior to, we as a human race, because I'm sure, the planet's been populated, many times, whether in a primitive format or extraterrestrial or.
Yeah. And I mean, there was a period before the last ice ages where mammals went through a giant phase, and they were very large, giant sloths, giant this, giant that, and the others, huge, big creatures. And they went through this gigantic phase. So, it's a thought, it's an idea, was that the source of it? And are they still lurking there? I mean, the Andean condor is a huge bird with a massive wingspan. What else is out there? And I think, I'm not sure if we touched on it last time, but what people call living fossils do turn up. The most famous one is the coelacanth, an armored fish, which was thought to have been dead for hundreds of millions of years, and is sort of now happily swimming around South Africa.
Well, look at the giant squid. I think you just have to go deep into the water.
Exactly. How exactly do these scientists go about and saying, well, these don't exist anymore and those don't exist anymore, if they're not on the floors of these oceans, which are at great depths that human beings cannot go, and neither can camera equipment to a certain degree because it will shatter. So how can they say anything? It really is almost paranormal in the oceans.
Yeah. And when you consider how much of the world is ocean, there's more water than there is land. And even where there's land, there's huge expanses where people don't go or very rarely go. The deserts of Asia, sort of to the west of China, heading towards Russia. There's a huge empty area there. There's Saudi Arabia. They call it the empty quarter. The desert there is unexplored. A lot of Australia, huge continent. And then there's all the jungle areas, which again.
Well, you have to look at the lost continents like ancient Lemuria.
Yeah.
Not too far from, Australia or the African coast. And I mean, who knows, like where some of those, like we talk about a lot in the oceans. Well, I'm sorry, but if you have a continent go down, you're going to have a lot of, animals or sea life that would have been native to that area that would have had to have gone outward. And, your stories of Atlantis, everything else. I mean, realistically, they have found 2 continents, right, that have been lost to us. And so it's like, who knows what's actually still roaming out there. I think Bigfoot's probably one of the most common. And they compared it to, when you were talking about these mammals that did this huge surge. Yeah. And there was one, like a gorilla type.
Giganticus or something like that.
I couldn't remember the whole name of it. Yeah. But yes. And some people are like, well, it could still be, this creature that's still, managed to survive.
And a creature like that would give rise to myths of giants.
Yes, it would have. Yes.
Yeah, in the same way that we all have, all folklores have legends about little people, elves, and the like. Yes. The Homo florientus, is it the little people called hobbits that have been found on one of the Flores, one of the Indonesian islands? Again,
and that's all real too.
And that's all real, and they were living during the time Homo sapiens were around. So our ancestors would have encountered them. So, you know, it's not at all far-fetched. And I say the Bigfoot, the Yeti in the Himalayas. There's a creature in, I think, Siberia called the Alamati. There's, you know, there are, again, numerous versions of it around the world. And again, all independent. You know, where did Bigfoot come from? There was no crossover with the Himalayas when the first Bigfoot tales were coming out, and the Yeti. So you know, again, are these distant memories or rare encounters with rare beings that we're talking about here, as opposed to just all made up? And as you say, we don't know. And I suppose one of the more hopeful things is there seems to be more of a trend in science to be less cynical. And it used to be, if we can't prove it scientifically, it doesn't exist. Now I think there's more of a recognition that there's a lot of weird stuff out there that we don't really fully understand. So saying, oh, ghosts and cryptozoology couldn't possibly exist. We don't know that for certain. Maybe it does exist. And, you know, this whole idea of the sort of quantum realm and quantum world and multiverses and the like, you know, way beyond my O-level physics brackets failed exams from school days.
Right.
So I'm not one to comment on it, but you know, it is a recognition that the world is a lot more complicated and there's a lot of unknown stuff out there, and it's no longer a case of saying, well, we haven't proved it in science, therefore it doesn't exist. Now it's very much more a case of there's huge gaps that we don't understand about. So we're going to remain open-minded about it. And I think cryptozoology is one of those. And
I agree. You know, I think military as well as governments. We'll go back to Bigfoot for a minute, because we just had a couple of guests on last week who did a documentary. I want to make sure I get both the names right. Toby Johnson and Brett Eisenberger.
Eichenberger.
Yes,
I know. I played with that one.
I know. I played with it just because it's off the top of my head. Yeah. But they researched it and did an amazing documentary.
Yeah.
And when the more you really poke and prod, you'll see that the government in the United States, you can't kill a Bigfoot. You'll be tried pretty much the same way as if you killed a person. And there's a very large forest out there that used to be part of an area where anybody could go into, but it's prominent for Bigfoot sightings. All of a sudden, the government has gone in and claimed, you know, like thousands of acres of it. And it's right along a border where they're known to frequent. So why would they, you know, do that? There's a lot of speculation with it. It could be something very benign, such as, no, they want to protect it, but it's all protected land.
Ministry of Forestry is a little bit, they get away with a lot of stuff.
They do.
Yeah. They have a lot of loopholes in their laws and things that.
Well, it's interesting either way that they would say, no, you can't kill one, you can't harm one. We're protecting them. So they're kind of admitting they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a big step.
Yeah. I mean, there is an element, because I mean, I've seen people on social media saying, you know, we're going Bigfoot hunting. Well, the last thing you want to do is go and shoot one.
You're going to get arrested.
Well, never mind that. If the animal's almost extinct, killing it's not going to help it at all.
No.
And not going to help do it. So you can understand that if it's thought that, well, there might be something out there, the last thing we want is a bunch of people who out there with guns wanting to have its head on a bike. So, you know, good luck for them for doing that.
Well, they're apparently like very, very intelligent. Brett and Toby were saying that as well. Numerous people they've interviewed. But, you know, any of the guests we have had on who've talked about them, probably because they're the most common cryptid that people see, would say they're highly intelligent. They have their own language. They communicate with one another. They've been known to communicate to a degree with people. They're observers. Some people believe they're extraterrestrial because they're seen with large balls of orbs around them. Just a lot, set like portals because they disappear, foot tracks stop dead, and you're kind of like, there's not a tree to jump into. It's like, where did they go? There's a lot of theories with them, but whatever it is, it must be pretty special because for the government to say, no, harm one, that's it, you're arrested and you'll be tried. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they must be intelligent because they've managed to avoid getting hunted down by us,
Right.
But, it's the same with, if you like, the evolution of humans. It used to be very simple. There were sort of apes, and then there were cavemen who went around going ugh, 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 and hitting each other with, the cartoon image. And then humans came along. Well, we now realize from looking at better specimens and also some of their burial practices and the like, that the Neanderthals, who were one of our cousins who became extinct, although in fact all of us have a bit of Neanderthal DNA in us still.
Some politicians have a lot.
I think that's a bit unfair on the Neanderthals, really.
Yeah, it is.
But they had language, and they had a form of art, and they took care of their dead, and they had rituals with burying their dead. So, those are all signs of a form of civilization in them. They're not primitive beasts. So why shouldn't they be?
Right.
No, it's a fascinating thing on it. And I say there is so much of the world out there that isn't fully explored. And I mean, I know we're not talking of exciting creatures, but all the probes and things that are going down to the seabed and are finding these funnels of hot water and volcanic stuff coming up. Sorry, you were going to say.
Oh, no, I'm just saying, if you start hearing like all kinds of roaring stuff, we've got a thunderstorm roaring through.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. But,
Sorry.
Hope your power's all right. When we have thunderstorms, the power goes off.
It could be hit and miss. But it's just if you hear it, because I'm thinking, what am I hearing? It's like,
okay. I guess it's coming by you before me because it's still sunny here. Well,
I guess so. Not so much. Yeah. So no, I agree with you. It doesn't have to be exciting. The fact that anything can go undetected or anything that has just been able to survive the test of time, like getting talking about giants and such. I mean, let's face it. Do you remember the wrestler? Even they called him Andre the Giant. He was a very big man.
Oh, he was over 8 feet, wasn't he?
Yeah. There have been people in our lifetime that have been super, super tall.
There's a basketball player. I believe he's in Asia. He's 8'9".
See, there you go. So somehow we still have traces of that. Because even in some of the museums, like not counting the Smithsonian's, which destroyed a lot of the giant bones that were found, there are old tales of giants being in and around the 8 or 9 foot range, but going considerably taller as well, like maybe 15 to 18 feet, which is like, whoa, when you look at the scope of things. But the fact is if they're even saying, yes, 8 to 9 feet tall, we have that in our lifetime. To turn around and say, no, this is something that didn't exist, to me, it's just, you have academia saying, no, they didn't exist, but we have it now.
Yeah.
Sorry, Amelia, go ahead.
No, never apologize. Thank you. No, I'm just thinking, how you said about scientists and that, because they're always running DNA and this is this and this is that. Well, who's to say they didn't mate and they didn't fall in love and create a whole other us coming through the lines where you do have some people who are tall and some people who are shorter. Just as time goes on, the genetics of this generation is stronger and so forth. I mean, it's a bit it would be ignorant to say that it's not possible.
I agree.
And I mean, you know, modern people, we have better diets than in past. I mean, up till the end of the 19th century, most people had a fairly Spartan diet, weren't really that healthy. And one effect is you don't grow that tall. So, you know, what we are now is the exception in history, if you like. We're a peak. And, you know, if you've got giants 9 foot tallish, well, that's almost double the height of someone from 100 years ago. You know, you know, that's so.
Yeah, I think the tales of giants, you're looking at all the burial mounds and such. And I mean, this is, again, all over the world. And I think the real tall ones are known to be, like, I think I've read more accounts of that being in Europe even than this side of the world. Doesn't mean that they're not, of course, you know, but again, we don't know that. I always say, because of, you know, dimensionally speaking, or all, like you were saying, multiverses and such, anything can come through. We have so many different dimensions within the one space that, like, you know, I could be sitting right here, and how many dimensions are actually floating through this space? You know, there's accounts of people who time travel, or people who just, you know, walk outside and go to the back of their house, and all of a sudden they're like, where am I? And then they turn around and go back, and then they're within their house again. Like, what the heck was that? So how do we know? Like, getting back to dragons just for a moment, you know, do you know how many people in my 20 years of being in this field have claimed to have seen things like dragons, like flying? And, like, you know, gifted people, maybe, you know, who can see into another dimension, or just the fact that something came through, maybe a portal, maybe it is a time slip, but they swear that they've seen gargoyles scaling a wall, or dragon flying through, even things like Nessie. How do we know she just doesn't come through a portal and goes back, which is why she's never really been found, and they can't seem to find traces. You know, they look at the lock and say, well, it can't sustain an animal this big. Maybe it doesn't have to.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, this brings us back to things like fairy folk, where the idea of a portal, where our world is very close to the other world, and there are certain places and certain times where, if you like, the veil between the two is more transparent, and you can pass through them. You know, all the tales of fairy folk, and, you know, they go back at least 1,000 years, have them living parallel lives to us, you know, and that it's not a case of they go down into a cave and there's tunnels, but rather there's somewhere where their existence is parallel to our existence. And, you know, it's a multiverse. The two of us are running along parallel, but just occasionally we cross over and we encounter each other.
What is your... I completely agree with that, because there's so many different tales of that. I remember researching something going back many months ago now, on something entirely different. I think I was researching the Druids, actually, for another show, and it spoke about how revered, you know, the fairy or the fae were, how they worked really closely with people. People didn't fear them. You know, they worked together, and in came Christianity. And all of a sudden, I guess, bastardized the whole relationship. And as much as the fae would try to work even with those, you know, from I guess, I hate to say religion, but that's pretty much what it was. They were setting a new standard, a new set of rules, to the point where eventually the Fae just stopped making themselves, I guess, visible to the living and backed away completely. Some say some went underground, some say, to remain here, or others just went, like you say, back into their own realm. What are your thoughts on that? Because people still have experiences, especially out in the UK and Ireland and Scotland. I mean, they actually, the people who live there pay homage to.
Yeah.
Especially if you look at the Isle of Skye as a perfect example.
Well, the magazine 40 and Times, they've been reporting on various surveys of people in recent years on their sightings of fairies as opposed to the Fae, as opposed to aliens. And there is still a fairly constant flow of stories of people encountering little people of some sort.
The little ones,
little, not the tiny little sort of Tinkerbell type things, but people who clearly aren't children and they aren't short, normal people, if you like. They're something else, and the fact is, people are prepared to put their name down and say, yeah, I had this strange experience and I saw it and this happened. So I think it's alive and well. I think, as you say, Christianity came along, and very much you see that with the tales of witchcraft. And there was an element in witchcraft that said they would work with the Fae and they would be helped by the Fae. And it was all very much, they would help find remedies and they were a source for good. However, Christianity came along and said, no, you're deluded. The Fae are merely demons sent to confuse you, sent to fool you. And if you deal with them, then your witchcraft is demonic. And it was all part of the church as it started in the sort of 14th, 15th centuries onwards, starting to persecute witchcraft. And very much anything to do with the Fae suddenly became bad news. They weren't magical little people. They were demons.
Sorry, I'm just having
yeah. So and I think the other element is urbanization. I mean, particularly on a place like England, which is relatively crowded in terms of people, and places that were once sacred, I suppose. There's now a housing estate on it, or a shopping mall, and we're forcing them away, forcing them out, forcing them to the boundaries, forcing them back into their own realm, cutting down the opportunities for them to liaise with us and deal with us.
I think the Scandinavian countries are a good example of that. I believe there was a story, was it Iceland or Norway, where they were building a highway and there was a large tree in the way that they wanted to take down. And apparently there was a newspaper article about this, by the way. Gnomes started giving the gnomes.
I think they're cute. She not so much.
I not so much, no. But they were giving the construction workers such a problem that all the construction had to stop. And the end result was they left the tree and the highway went around it.
Oh,
I know. Yeah. I'm like, you put this in a newspaper. This is
the first tree huggers of society.
I know.
Yeah, the Icelandics definitely believe in. They call them the hidden folk, the hidden folk, or something of that nature. And I think there's even a political party in Iceland that sort of stands up for hidden folks' rights. And it's very much if people say that pile of stones over there is sacred, they will protect it. Ireland has a similar thing with the little people as well. They have a similar belief that people will do detours, or they will avoid ploughing through a copse of trees that people say is sacred. Well, you know,
they'd be very disheartened if they were here, because people put them in their gardens.
Yes,
it's true. That's true.
Wow, I never looked at it that way. I don't have it in my garden, but I never looked at it that way.
But it's true. There are a lot of stories with gnomes, the belief system. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just, thinking back to something I came across. But gnomes, I guess, would work with people, and people would employ them for a certain amount of time, for something like 5 years or something like that. And they would be in their gardens, or they would maintain the property. And I guess after a certain amount of time, I guess it was prestigious to have a gnome take care of your property and such. And you had to treat them very, very well, because if you didn't, like, they could literally go the opposite on you and make your life a living hell, basically, right?
Yeah.
I again, goes back, I think, that when I was researching Druids and I came across all of that, and it didn't apply at the time, but I remember reading it going, I knew there was a reason I really didn't like them, but it's a little bit of validation for me. But apparently they can be just like fairies or the fae. They can be actually very aggressive. Like it's like a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In England, we tend to call them bogarts. There's a whole range of bogies and bogarts, and they are sort of household familiars, little creatures that will help the household, but they've got very strict rules. And one of the things is you shouldn't deliberately feed them. What you should do is leave some food out for them to take on a night. And you put a cake. It's a bit like the leaving the mince pies for Santa Claus on Christmas Eve.
Right.
You leave some food out, and
is it because they don't want to be seen, or they just want to be independent?
I think it's all the folklore suggests they don't like being condescended to, and people saying, here's some clothes for the little bogarts, here's some food for them. What they'd like is to think that they can take it if they want.
I see.
So,
I see.
We turn a blind eye to it.
Right.
But yes, you do get that, and all the time you've got them, they will be helpful. And if you cross them, they will be unhelpful, or they will leave altogether, and then it's bad luck for the family, and for the house, because people have left you.
A bogey here is very dangerous, because it's usually you're getting fired at from another military force. So,
yes,
yeah. That's interesting. People have actually caught video footage of gnomes in their gardens, and it's like, it's crazy because they got their little hats and everything.
That's so cool.
It's sure, let's go with cool. I don't know. In my garden,
are they from elves though? Like from the Keebler elves with the cookies, like.
Yeah, throw the cookie. Hey, go away.
I'm the comic relief. I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to, because gnomes, when you said if they're not taken care of well or are offended, can turn on you.
Yeah.
The fae are similar that way as well.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the fae tolerate humans, some more than others, but they don't take kindly to being disrespected, because if you read the folklore, the general suggestion is that the fae were around before us, so they are the older, wiser people, and they don't like us jumped up monkeys taking advantage of them and being rude to them. And so again, in fairy folklore, there is a whole range of things about always being polite for them and doffing the cap to them, your cap to them. And you don't refer to them as fairies. You call them the gentle folk or something of that nature, the gentlemen and the gentle ladies. You know, you're very polite to them.
Right.
And if you are polite to them, then they will tolerate you. But if you make fun of them and sneer at them or whatever, then they will turn malicious, and then you will have trouble.
We would not want that, because I hear they can be pretty aggressive.
Nasty.
Yeah.
Nasty.
Yeah.
People look at fairies and say, oh, they're like Tinkerbell cute, but realistically, they can really like work you over.
Wasn't that gentle? Like, go back in the 1950s. Films have changed from Disney. Just saying.
Yeah. 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 There's I mean, there's a whole sort of etiquette for dealing with them. There's a tale, it's in one of my books, about a mound up in an old burial mound up in Yorkshire, and a farmer was going past there one night, and he saw lights there and crept in and saw that there were fairy folk having a festivity, having a festival in there. And he was offered a drink, and he knew that if he accepted and drank from it, he would be beholden to them, because, you know, he had taken advantage of them, and therefore they would expect something back from him. And that's a thing. You should never accept food or drink from a fairy.
Really?
Because you're then in their debt.
Now you owe them.
Are they trying? Oh, you're in their debt, but
That's
they're not
right.
trying to harm you.
No,
They're not trying to harm you. You're in your debt, and
Okay.
you know that you got. That they will want something back from you.
It's
or
leverage.
possibly
Yeah, I understand.
They
They
will
want
capture
it
you.
right away, but they're going to want it at some point. And you have
Kind
to.
of like the mob. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And this particular farmer knew this, so he quietly tipped his drink on the floor and then ran off and hopped on his horse and escaped. And the fairies all chased after him, but he jumped over some running water, and the fae apparently can't climb over running water. I mean, it's another long-standing thing in folklore.
Move on a property with a stream. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Stream, leave the hose running.
Yeah.
Okay.
Build a stream.
But then the cup he'd got ends up being given to the King of England, who then gives it to the King of Scotland, and these are all named people, and it was supposedly still in their treasury in the sort of 14th century, this sort of magical cup that had been there. So, you know, it's
that's crazy.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Here's a question. So let's say, for example, the farmer is the one who's really, they would consider to be indebted to you. What would happen if the farmer passes or he moves and another person comes along and takes the land? Does that debt get passed to the new owner of that land because they're now the proprietor?
It's the individual.
Okay,
it's very much the individual.
Okay.
That you've got the obligation, and I say one of the things is that, which is it's where you start getting fairy law almost starts running into UFO law. The idea of if you step into a fairy ring, you know, of mushrooms, fungus growing on the ground, you fall into their hands. And there are endless tales in folklore, again, going way, way back, of people who go away and go dancing with the fairies and have a very good time. But when they wake up in the next morning, 5 years, 10 years or longer has elapsed. And that there's been this big difference in time. And they thought they were only gone for a night. And, you know,
it sounds like an alien abduction.
Well, this is the interesting thing, because you get the same thing with alien abductions, that people think they're out, you know, it's only a short time or it's a very long time, but the time is this time distortion. And exactly the same thing going back 1,000 years has been told about the fae. that if you fall into their hands, there's this time distortion. There's
Mm-hmm.
one tale of King Hurler, who was a Anglo-Saxon king, who went for a weekend festivity at the invitation of the fairies, and when he came back, 300 years had gone by, and he and all his, the legend is he and all his knights have to stay on their horse, because if they touch the ground, they'll just crumble to dust, and the age will catch up with them.
Oh wow!
But it's just intriguing that both the Fae and aliens have this time distortion, that if you go with them, a lot longer passes than you would imagine. So
that does sound a lot like alien abduction. Your microphone.
Yeah, yours.
Yeah, your microphone. Can't hear you. Really?
No.
I could read lips though. Really? Nope, can't hear you. Oh, there you are.
You're back. You're back.
You're back.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just seeing the lips move, and we're best friends, so I know exactly what she's saying.
I know.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah.
Yeah, I know exactly what she's saying. She said, really? You can't hear me seriously?
Really?
It would be a series of asterisks going across.
I know.
Yeah.
When they start going into private chat, and okay, that's funny. Oh my gosh. I find it completely fascinating, because there's so many different, I guess, cultures that would, like they live quite and have a healthy respect for different pieces of folklore. And I know when I was in Scotland, I spent some time in the Isle of Skye, and they had stone fairy circles, like rings that just went around, and people would come in and would just, leave coins for them, or leave little gifts and things like that. And then there was the Fairy King Grotto up at the top, and then they had the Fairy Springs, and everything has sort of been rearranged, I guess. And it's just sort of left just for this area where I guess there's a lot of sightings there. And the Fairy King Grotto, I mean, this thing is just, this ancient structure that just seems to be falling down, but
I love fairies.
I know.
Yeah.
But there's I just find there's certain parts of the world that are very, very respectful. I know that there are sightings of fairies even here in North America. And there are people who go healthily looking for them, and they know where they are. But it goes to show you, it's just not stuff that you heard about, obviously, until, it was more populated here. But it makes me wonder, when you're dealing with little people, are those a type of fairy folk, maybe? Like on this side of the world?
Well, are they a type of fairy folk, or are they a type of small people?
Right.
Like, the hobbits, Homo florentiensis. I mean, there are reports from the islanders there that these small people, they claim they still exist and are still in the woods, although the fossil record suggests that they became extinct 30,000 years ago.
How would they know if they're not the vast forest? How would they know? It's again like the ocean thing. How do you really know unless you've scoured every inch of forest, especially Canada? 80% of our country is forest.
And deep, dense, with
you can't
cave
get through
systems
it.
And lots of places to hide, like here for sure. But look at like puckwudgies. I always have to say it because I love the saying.
Loves the word. She loves the word. Yes,
I love the word puckwudgie. but it's a thing, and same idea. They just sort of surface every now and then, and the indigenous people of the area are well aware of them.
Yeah, and if we are Western scientists going on an expedition with tons of gear, we're tramping through the forest, making a noise that can be heard from miles away. Well, any self-respecting creature is going to go and hide, or here we're coming, and move to another part. And as you say, if you've got a huge big forest, there's no way you can find what's going on there.
Just the cave systems alone, that have been found throughout different parts of the world, that you can, you go into Europe, my gosh, you can find tunnels that go from not even natural, even let's look at natural tunnels, but let's look at those that have been created by, by people. It goes all over from one country. You don't even need a passport, man. You just go keep going.
Priests, the churches
for miles.
Yeah.
Miles.
Royal families.
Yeah,
everything. You could go from one country to another without. Yeah, obviously not when it's an island like England, but you can travel across Europe easily.
Yeah, they're just there. They're definitely in the natural ones that go through cave systems. You could hide. You don't even know who could be hiding in there. If you go to Malta, there's a large cave system there, apparently. People used to be able to go in and sightsee. And then one day, an entire classroom, a teacher and students disappeared. And it's since been closed off.
Yeah.
Sad.
But
where was that?
That was in Malta.
Wow.
I don't know if it was like the 70s, the 80s, like what's modern times. And they closed it off. So it goes to show, like, are there things there? Because again, we've had guests who have been on the show who said, "Oh, we're exploring this cave system," and all of a sudden it looked like they came up to a portal. And there have been stories of people who just choose, going through the portal, we're just going to disappear. And others are like, we'll meet back here in a year, and the person goes back and the portal never reappears.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I know. So who knows what comes through them? That's what I was saying earlier about dragons and maybe Nessie, some of these cryptids that just come in, they come out, like it's hard to say. Like you talked a little bit about werewolves on the last show. And there's a strong belief that, beings that we would consider to be something out of a horror movie, like a werewolf or a vampire. Some people truly believe they're just another race of being that come through portals. And, that's the way it is. We have, much like, I guess, Bigfoot, here in this side of the world, they're called dogmen or wolf people. And it's like, okay, let's just say people migrated from the old world into the new world, and along with them came their ancient traditions and their bits of folklore. Maybe a werewolf or two. Like maybe, you have somebody who, let's say it is a genetic thing, because there are people who believe, no, it's a genetic thing. I have a family member who just, could do it. Or, I can't see it, but let's just, for craziness sake, sure. And they migrate over to the new world. It becomes a hereditary thing. Then these things surface. I tend to lean to, dimensional being myself, but, let's just say they just sort of made their way here. What's your theory on these sort of beings? Because I know there are sightings of dogmen, and I know with vampires, there are up-teen tales of modern day, stories of people who have been around for centuries and they don't change.
Yeah. You get that with, although you can say, vampires as we know them started with Dracula, which was one of the first tales that sets out what we call, vampire lore.
Right.
There are tales going back into the 18th century of the Count Saint-Germain and Cagliostro, and they were sort of magicians come sorcerers, and Germain in particular is said to have been immortal and lived for far longer.
1600s, some people say.
Wow.
And there was a tale of somebody in New Orleans in the 1970s who looked like the depictions of him.
That's right.
And you think, well, perhaps perhaps the sucking the blood thing is not it, but there may well be, maybe it's more a case of taking other people's life force or energy of some sort, something of that nature.
Could it be time traveler? Could it be, again, interdimensional or dimensional being that just pops up
at different times? Yeah.
It's so hard just to get your head around certain beings. I don't know. It's you go back to stories in Poland, even, some of the cemeteries that are, a few hundred years old that have been found where they've, big fear of vampires, where they, cut off the head and put a stone in the mouth to keep them, from biting down. They take the head, put it down between your ankles. Make sure you got to feel around for it. I don't know, but it's just there are all kinds of stories like that. It's a real healthy, belief. So I was just
that idea of the living dead or the walking dead again is a very old belief. There's a cemetery that archaeologists have been working on up in the area where I wrote a book about the Wold-Newton Triangle. And when they were digging up the it's a deserted medieval village, and they were exploring the burials around the churchyard, and they found 12 individuals there that had all been ritually mutilated after death, and they'd had their legs broken and cut off and their heads removed. It's a very sort of simplistic approach, but if you don't want the dead to walk, cut the legs off and they can't walk.
That's right.
Bury them face down. They can't rise up because they're pointing the wrong way. Chop their head off and put it between the legs. They won't be able to find it. It's the same with burying people at crossroads. The theory is that if the spirit rises up, it's faced with 4 different paths to go on and doesn't know where to go. So you stop them pestering the living. But this again, you're going back 1,000 years. It wasn't church doctrine. It was clearly folk belief that certain people were bad people who might come back to harm the living, and to make sure they weren't going to do it. And it was a fact of life, and it's everywhere. And again, it's a European-wide belief.
Yeah, it is.
And maybe the vampire is more of the exotic end of the belief.
Yeah, I mean, it's still very healthy in some places. I know, of course, I do find the Eastern European countries, Romania for one, for me, having spent time there, I know that even the werewolf folklore is still very much alive. If you go to Brasov and you go down into the town square, it was just beautiful, beautiful village, been around for ages, but it's a very Germanic. There's a lot of German people who are there. It goes back since World War II. I guess they had settled in and then remained there. So it's got that really nice Scandinavian Germanic feel to it. But the story goes that on every full moon, werewolves come from the mountain and they come into the town square. And it's basically like, no, you don't be in the town square when they come down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, they don't just stay in the town square. Obviously, they can go anywhere they want. It's a wide open brick, but they really believe it, so it's just, I was sort of like in between the supermoon at that point. I ended up, in the haunted forest at that night, but I had just left Brasov and the gypsies will tell you, oh, don't be here, in the next couple of nights. So it's just like, it was really difficult because it was sort of a toss up as to where I should be that night.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think when you hit certain places, there is still a really healthy belief. Here, there's just tons of sightings down this way.
Yeah.
Throughout, North America.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is a thing. These beliefs stay on, and you can imagine it happening through, certainly in places like Romania, through to the early years of the 20th century, when those were very backward countries and not much in the way of education. But we're now living in the internet age. Everybody's got a mobile phone with internet access, but these beliefs still remain, and they're not going away. So that it shows the strength of the feeling and the beliefs that people have, and they're not just impressionable hillbillies who don't
they're well aware.
They're aware, and they have an affinity for their traditions, their folklore, and their beliefs.
But are there still sightings? I mean, England's got so many different sightings. I mean, you guys have got demon dogs. You guys have got the banshee.
That's more over Ireland. That's
Is it?
more, yeah.
Ireland banshee. That's a wicked, wicked hag.
Yeah.
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 You have demon dogs. Are there anything? Are they reported to be like hellhounds, or are they the same, or are they different?
They are. There's tales of large black dogs all over the east of England, right down from Essex, which is near London, heading up towards Yorkshire, and lots of sightings of these demon dogs. And again, you can find websites where people say, they've seen something. The terminology tends to be a bit blurred, whether or not they are a great big frightening hound, or whether they are a supernatural hound or demonic hound. In olden times, anything like that would be classed as demonic. But it's intriguing that it's all over the eastern counties, and all that area was the area that the Vikings used to conquered back in the early Middle Ages. And with Viking folklore, you have wolves and you have giant hounds, and Thor, I think, has a couple of large hunting hounds or whatever that with him, and there's Fenrir, who is the giant dog that eventually brings everything to an end with Ragnarok, this huge hound.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that the areas that have got the most dog sightings are the ones that were Viking, and so had the sort of Icelandic, not Icelandic, Scandinavian folklore element.
Okay.
We have one just down the road here called Black Shuck, and that first appeared in the 16th century and attacked people and killed people, and there's been sightings of it ever since. And they say it's very big, almost like the size of a small pony, and it's very, very shaggy furred. But
sounds like an English wolfhound.
Yeah, so you can see why they deem it demonic, because a hellhound has 3 heads, so it's like very specific.
No, it's not a Cerberus with
bizarre,
the 3 heads.
Right?
Yeah, it's not that. That it's its behavior is thought to be demonic. I mean, the Hound of the Baskervilles, the Sherlock Holmes story, that really is a sort of a fictionalized version, and it's a dog that's made up. And got various things put on it, so it looks scarier than it really is.
Mm-hmm.
But the tales vary. Some of them, it's bad luck to see it. Some of them, almost like the banshee, it's a harbinger of death. If you see the hound or hear it, you are going to die. And with others, people say it's protective. And, there's tales of little old ladies, if you like, going home at night and it's a bit spooky, and suddenly they become aware of this large dog walking next to them, like a guard dog.
Right.
Doesn't do anything, but just sees them on the way home and makes sure nobody attacks them or does anything to them. So, they vary from being good luck and bad luck. But again, that's going back to quite a few other things, like the gnomes and the fae and everything else.
Yeah.
There's a good side and there's a bad side.
It's yin and yang. It's a balance of energy. Yeah. I'd like one of those puppies.
Yeah, there was an excavation, an archaeological excavation about 10 years ago at a monastery near here, and they found in the graveyard the bones of a huge dog. It would have been not a Great Dane, but something of that nature. It was obviously
probably like a dire wolf.
It wasn't a wolf type, but
No.
it was clearly some abbot's pampered pooch, and it was a hunting dog. But
Oh, wow.
it's just it led to lots of newspaper reports about Black Shuck, the demon dog, has been found, sort of very large skeleton. But,
right.
I'd like a dire wolf as well. I think they're stunning creatures.
But if we say over the eastern side of England, we have all these tales of black dogs, and then over on the western side, we have big cats. They're known as ABCs, anomalous big cats.
Yeah, we've got those here.
Again, are they cryptids or some kind of wildcat, or are they exotic pets that people have suddenly realized are ferocious beasts and have let loose and dropped them off in the countryside where plenty of sheep and things for them to live on.
Right.
But again, there's been this constant stream of stories for 60 or 70 years of these cats. So it's, again, not some passing phase. It's clearly there's something.
It's interesting. I find it interesting how the tales just crisscross from place to place. Like I said, we've got tales of them here in like New Orleans, all the way up into throughout the United States, into southern Canada, southern Ontario. Here, even the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry keeps track of them because there have been sightings, and they look for bones and feces and things like that, and they have found them and really large cats. And they're like, well, maybe this is an escapee from a zoo, a small zoo, or something along those lines. But there was one location that I remember filming at where a large black cat made its way into stables of a large stable barn, and they had the big arena, everything. And it attacked, well, first off, it went into one of the stalls, and I got a bunch of photos of it. The big claw marks down the wall of the stable, dug right into the wood. And shortly after that, this cat went to attack a foal. And one of the mares sacrificed herself to save the foal. This is all documented.
That's
and
so
they just,
sad.
It is really sad. But the house, the farm, the whole ranch had a lot of really malevolent activity associated with it. But it just, no one ever came across this large cat, and witnesses who had seen it said, no, it was huge, probably about the size of a large black cat, panther style black leopard. But nobody could figure out where the heck it came from. Because you would think for it to reproduce, it would have to be at least two of them. And the stories keep
unless
going.
the other one passed or something. I don't know. We have a lot of huge cats in Canada, though, in the wild.
Well, but you have them, like, you know, you've got the puma, the cougars, the lynxes, things like that.
The lynxes
These are
beautiful.
not native to Canada. But
people have tried to domesticate the lynx. I'm like, you're crazy.
So I don't know, but it's
a wild cat is always a wild cat.
It's just interesting how the stories crisscross from one part of the world to the next.
I mean, some of these cats may actually be individual specimens, and cats can live a long time. And as long as there's a supply of food, they may just be individuals, and another individual replaces them, as opposed to there is a native, you know, grouping of them, as opposed to they're in a family group. So it is possible that is the cause of it. But again, it's one of those things where there are so many reports. You can't just say, "Oh, yeah, it was a domestic cat," and you've got the focus on your camera wrong. I mean, some quite clearly, the perspective and the scale is wrong, but other ones, they are big. They are big. I mean, what's that big domestic cat you have in the States? Is it a
Savannah?
Maine Coon cat?
Oh, the Maine Coon.
Oh, Maine Coon.
Yeah,
they're
so big.
Cute.
Yeah, they can get very, very big.
They're
very big.
They get in excess of 60 pounds, don't they? They're
they can be really big.
They are so cuddly.
They're cute, but they're. But
they
I
look
mean,
like
if one
Sylvester from Tweety Bird cartoon. That's what they remind me of. Is Sylvester. Seriously, I've always wanted one.
Yeah. But I mean, you've got your domestic version, and then you've got these big.
Yeah, I've seen those big ones. Those are usually deep south, where you see the photos on
but
Instagram and that of those. Yeah.
But are they the type of cat that's going to go around and kill livestock, for instance, or
puppies?
No.
You know, I don't know. I don't know.
They wouldn't. But I mean, I merely raised it because we were out for a walk here one day and encountered one that was out for a prowl, and it was enormous. I've never seen one in real. I've seen them on videos and things, but never seen one in real life. And it was enormous. It was huge. So you can see why some of these tales of big cats, they could be domestic cats that are just being misinterpreted. But so many of them, particularly when they start looking at the wounds on the animals, and particularly, say, sheep tend to be the thing they get in the UK. The bite marks and the wounds on them, they're not something a dog or a domestic cat, even a big feral cat, I mean, could do. They're something bigger, you know, the incisors and the jaws and things, and the claw markings and so on, which is always a good sign of the size of a creature.
I off topic of cats, but raccoons, I'd love to know where they come from, because if you see them of late, they are so friendly because we're building so much here. I think they're just so used to being around people. I'm curious, seriously. I've thought about it sometimes, wondering, where are they? Like, where do they come from? What is their line? Because they are so intelligent. They use their hands like we do. They're unbelievable. And if you feed them, they never go away. You know, like I just
have those in
I know
England?
it's something weird in Canada. Like I've seen, if you watch TikTok, you'll see a lot of, Jimmy Petnito is one of them, who's constantly feeding 2 or 3 raccoons on his stack. And then I've got one that just lives in their house with their other pets that I've seen. And I'm like, what the heck?
But is that a North American thing, or do you guys have those in England?
We don't have them in England. They have raccoons, or is it a raccoon dog or raccoon fox they call it? But they have a raccoon in Japan as well.
It's a fox.
Right.
Yeah. It's not a pure. It's not related to
No, it's because of the mask on the fox, on the eyes, the fur mask.
There is a raccoon type creature. I'm not sure if they call it a raccoon dog, and it's derived from that. It's not a pure raccoon, but I mean, I think one of the things about those, obviously, and we're all biased by Guardians of the Galaxy anyway, and the raccoon on there.
But, rabbit.
I know.
Rabbit. Yes, we're calling them a rabbit.
they are creatures that we can identify with because they've got faces like ours in terms of relatively flat, with eyes pointing forwards, as opposed to a lot of animals that have their eyes at their head, because so they can see backwards or whatever.
And their hands.
Different, and their hands.
Yeah.
And I think there's a bit of anthropomorphism there going on there, that we sort of.
They are so smart.
Yeah.
They are so smart. It's not funny. Like, they are so smart. They will take apart garbage bins, and it doesn't matter how you have them locked up or covered up or anything. You will wake up to a mess if you have them in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. They're so cute though. Anyways.
Yeah. No, I mean it's that thing, isn't it? That some animals just have this element of non-human, I suppose, almost supernatural intelligence, and we're not sure whether to be impressed by them or slightly scared by them, I think is the.
Well, it makes you realize why it's so easy for some of them to be able to elude mankind, and to just keep going and going and going, why we never see them, and how they manage to not go extinct, or how they evolve to the degree that they evolve. We have to do a very quick station ID and sponsor ID.
Here we go. Yes. You are listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and myself, Amelia Pisano, coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans on 105.3 FM radio. And tonight we have in the house Christian Charles with us.
The other way around.
Sorry, Charles Christian. I have it written the other way. I'm so sorry, Charles Christian. And I'll tell you a story after about that. Stream or listen to our archives and the platform you normally use. We are everywhere, and we want to give a huge thank you shout out to the amazing people at Folgers Coffee for fully sponsoring our show from day one. We love you. We thank you so much. No one loves you more than Michelle and I. And a huge thank you to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, award-winning composer, for lending his voice and his music for our intro and our outro to the show.
All right. Thank you.
I have you written backwards on I do the Italian thing. I go last name first.
Yes.
Yes.
I'd like to connect a little bit on power spots throughout the UK, because there seems to be the world's power spots. And I think power spot, I think of England right away, Stonehenge being, of course, one of them. But a lot of the power spots is where the ancients would literally build their temples on, or congregate in very ritualistic manners. It's also a place where it's believed to have portals, and, you get a lot more sightings of maybe not so much cryptids, but I think, even with the solstices, they always incorporated how to deal with ghosts and things of that nature. And, we're going to make sure we feed them. We're going to make sure we cater to them, because the veil is the thinnest at certain times of year, but also the activity seems to be the greatest in these locations. And even when, Christianity came in, they would build over top of these temples.
Yes.
So they took them as their own. So they obviously knew that these places were very special. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. I mean, as you say, Stonehenge is one of the best known examples, but there are lots of stone circles and monoliths, and now we have better archaeology. We're discovering lots of wood circles or wood henges, that have been built and lost. There's one on the coast of Norfolk, which is where I live, called Seahenge, which was revealed. And again, clearly a ritual point. And interestingly, the Seahenge one is right at the end of a long distance footpath, which has been used since pre-Roman times, because it was dry land across marshes and things of that nature. So there's a lot of them, and I suppose it's chicken and egg. Is there? So when you stand in the middle of them, you can't help but feel there's some kind of power there, some kind of mysterious sense about them. But is that sort of because you're surrounded by the stones and they've got so much? I mean, a stone circle's got 4,000 years plus of history behind it. Is it because of that, or is it because
stone can absorb energy, can't it?
Yeah. Or is it because they were built there because that point had some energy in the first place, and so the stones were built there because it was a magical place in the first spot, a sort of some part of ritual landscape? Or is it the other way around, and we feel it? But yes, we have a lot of those, and there's lots of folklore about, as you say, portals, that it's a place where the fae might appear and come through to see you. And there's lots of tales of cryptids, big dogs, hairy people, whatever, emerging from them, and obviously ghosts. And I think it's probably fair to say the main paranormal thing we have in England are ghosts. You know, we love our ghosts. We're thick in ghosts everywhere. But you know, it's an intriguing one. I mean, there is a theory that a lot of these places were originally built as signposts to different parts of the country. There's what's called the St. Michael and St. Mary ley line, which runs through England from the Norfolk coast right down to Cornwall and to Land's End. And when you look at it on a map, and you can actually Google it, there is a Google Maps do have the entire ley line on there. It covers lots of stone circles, hilltops, churches on hilltops, old ruins, etc. And you know, it's thought it was possibly there because that was signposting you down to the West Country. And in the 1,000 years before the Romans came over, so 3,000 years ago, that's where you got tin, and tin was used with copper to create bronze, which was the miracle substance of the sort of of history at that time, the Bronze Age. And it's intriguing that some of these routes and some of these circles and enclosures are all on these long distance tracks that were used over countless generations for legitimate trading purposes. And I say, we mentioned the one that where Seahenge is, that takes you up through, it was a safe track between marshes and took you to high ground. The St. Michael line takes you right across England to where the tin was found. So you know, it's I've got a book somewhere about it, but it's the equivalent of motorway signs, but megalithic motorway signs.
Right.
You know, how you'd navigate, and you know, the idea of the old straight track. You're standing on one hill and you want to know where to go. Well, you aim for the next hill you can see, and you make your way towards it. And
right. Well, ley lines in the paranormal world are called, are nicknamed Highway of the Dead.
Yeah.
So they can hitch a ride through that energy line and end up pretty much anywhere. I know that I had lived in a place called Burlington, and there was a city hall there, and they had ley lines across in and around there, apparently. And what was interesting is that the people who worked in the building, even in the middle of the day, would look down every once in a while, because that's how the stories came to me from the folks at City Hall. And there would be horses and carriages of people in period clothing. And some of them, was like, they're not from here. Like everything about these people, they know that they had like more European feel to them in the way that they dressed and so on. And I thought that's really interesting. And I guess they brought in somebody who practiced feng shui, and this individual came in and said, no, it's because there are ley lines here. So anything could hitch a ride, and they never saw the same thing twice, because I thought, oh, maybe it's an imprint, and it's just like an energy imprint.
Yeah.
And like, no, we've never, once you see them and they're gone, you don't see them again.
That's
but you would see something different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought, wow, that's really fascinating.
I'd camp out there. I just camp out right there.
People have done it, but it's even happened. There's no rhyme or reason as to when the event would occur, because it could be, I mean, they would work, they finish at 4 o'clock, right? So, and it would happen during the days most of the time for them to be able to see it.
It would be interesting is to reference that, like cross-reference and see when there was a full moon and these sightings, and see if that created enough energy or gave it even more energy to have them manifest even more. Who knows? You might be onto something.
The energy changes, so it's especially when the moon is full or
seismic.
I mean, energy affects us as people. The full moon affects us as people. It affects ocean currents. We're like 95% water. And of course, it would affect us differently. It would affect energy differently. But I don't know.
And you I mean, in the southwest of England, a lot of the underlying stone is granite, and you get radon from it. And is there something there that's the cause of it? There is a natural cause in the underlying geology, and the people of the time were unaware of the details of it. Just felt something from it, and it's gone on from there.
Well, here we live, Michelle and I, even though we're 40 minutes apart, we live on top of limestone and granite here in Southern Ontario. So, and it's quite haunted around this area.
A lot of activity, but also running water that goes underneath the land.
There's 2,000 plus falls here.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I can't remember.
That's also going to amplify energy. But, it's a curiosity, because when you say that all these spots have things that will manifest, even, cryptid sightings, again, it just makes me wonder, are there portals? What is it about these spots? Are they where the ley lines cross? Are they all on ley lines? Are they, like people built the temples in places where now there are churches, and you always get tales of something. There's always something going on around them. But with respects to ley lines, even UFOs allegedly will follow ley lines when traveling.
Yes. And I mean, one of the other names for ley lines is dragon lines as well, which brings us back to where we
started. Yes.
And why do they call them dragon lines, Charles?
I think it's the sort of Chinesey feng shui name. Right. I think it derives from that, but it's
from the Asian culture.
Asian culture, that there is some kind of force that follows along them, and that dragons would follow them.
Yes. Yeah, they had, I mean, the Chinese had and Japanese, Asia had their dragon tails, I think, shortly after the ancient Sumerians, and even the Egyptians had tails of dragons. Like it really goes back thousands and thousands of years. But the fact, again, that it transcends globally, to me is very fascinating. Even sightings have been done along mountain ridges and things like that. So what are they following? Where are they coming out?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yes, you called them Roads of the Dead, did you?
Highway of the Dead. Yeah,
Highway of the Dead,
that's a nickname for them.
They have parts of England, they call them ghost roads.
There we go.
The idea was it was the route people would take a coffin from where somebody had died to where there was a church, and you'd follow this route across.
Right.
It.
Yeah. Right.
And there's a famous one across North Yorkshire called the Like Wake Walk, and there's a long song to go with it as well. It's a 40-mile walk that takes you right across the North Yorkshire moors, the highest points of them. Wow. And it's a straight line. It's now a sort of sporting event, and people will walk it. And
it's crazy.
Yeah. But it's again one of those traditions that we have on both sides of the Atlantic. It's an international concept.
Do you find that, culturally speaking, especially I imagine on the outskirts, do you find that people are still honoring a lot of the really old British traditions?
They certainly do in Scotland and to an extent in Wales. Not so much in England, but England's more urbanized, and it tends to kill off those traditions. If you're all living in the same street, can't be doing it. But I mean, there are people who here in Norfolk will be meeting up day after tomorrow for a bonfire, and Midsummer's Eve.
Nice.
And St. John's Eve.
And what's involved in that? That sounds exciting, actually.
It's more a thing in Europe, particularly the Scandinavian places, and the Swedes in particular. It's their sort of biggest festival besides Christmas, and in fact it's halfway point. The old midsummer is June the 25th, and it's the halfway point between Christmas and halfway point in Christmas. So in Scandinavia it involves feasting and a lot of drinking.
Wow, then.
Well, it's like Christmas.
Yeah, pretty much. Sounds like a great festival.
Well, Sweden's known as being in the vodka area. The vodka's one of their drinks. And,
right.
It's one of mine too.
They do party strongly there.
There's something about a large bonfire and a lot of drinking, though, that just strikes me as proceed with caution.
But a little dangerous.
Well, yes. They sit around and have the bonfires, but the traditions are in some areas that the bonfires are to protect against evil spirits, because we've passed the solstice, so the days are starting to get shorter only by minutes at that point. But the forces of darkness are about, so you have the bonfire.
I love this.
They in Ireland and in parts of Scotland and some of the Scottish islands, they do various versions of jumping over the bonfire. Obviously, you don't have a huge big blade, but you jump over the ashes, or you walk round them, or you actually, this is when the bonfires have really got down to ashes, you drive your cattle through them, and that gives them good luck and wards off evil and witchcraft and the things.
It, like,
I mean, it's protective.
Like cleanses them and protects them at the same time, grounds them.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
I say it really is more a thing in continental Europe, Scandinavia.
And that's the 25th, Charles?
It is Old Midsummer, and it is, where is my date? There's St. John's Eve, which I think is the 24th. And then, and then Midsummer's Day is the...
because it's Saint Jean de Baptiste Day in Quebec.
That's it. That's it. It's the same.
So I'm available. Michelle, you want to come over for a bonfire?
Yeah, okay.
I love that idea.
Don't we have a show tomorrow? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the 24th is Friday.
Oh, that's okay. So we can. Right.
Yeah. Yes. There's a tradition in Sweden that girls pick 7 flowers from 7 different fields, and then you put them under your pillow during Midsummer's Eve's night, which is the 24th to 25th. Right. And you will then dream of your future husband. So you get a bit of the love divination, which is again a constant theme in.
In modern day, can we pick 7 flowers from 7 different florists?
I think you would have. Thank you.
So for those of you that are single out there, because I've been married for 29 years, but for those of you who are single out there, 7 flowers from 7 different fields. But Charles says it's okay to go to a florist.
Exactly. And I've got a note here. It says that St. John's Eve is also connected with Louisiana voodoo. And
it would.
Yeah. Marie Laveau was said to hold ceremonies on the Bayou St. John on St. John's Eve.
Yes. Saint Jean de Baptiste is how we know him in Canada.
Right.
Yeah. Saint Jean de Baptiste. Yeah.
That's interesting. I love these old traditions. Do they believe that the veil is the thinnest during these times of like the solstice and
they do, because I think that's why they have the bonfires to fend off evil, and start doing the protective, jumping over the flames, driving your cattle either round them or over the fires, or in some instances between 2 bonfires and so on. But it's a big thing, the bonfires.
It does take away a little bit from the whole Halloween theme of the veil is the thinnest on All Hallows Eve. Apparently the veil is pretty thin a few times of the year, because you've got at least 4 solstices and a couple of these celebrations too, right? Autumn.
That's a really good point.
Summer.
Yeah. I mean, All Hallows is obviously a very important one, and the other one is Beltane, May Eve.
Yes.
Those seem to be the main ones where it's thought to be the veil's the thinnest.
Right.
Not so much with the spring and autumn equinoxes so much.
Right.
They're relatively
the winter solstice. I know that they really hunker down, I guess, and there's a lot to do with spirits in that time.
Probably the lack of sunshine as well. In the Italian culture,
darker, spooky.
Yeah, in the Italian culture, New Year's Eve, they come out at midnight banging pots. It's not to wake up their neighbors. It's to, discourage and send away all the bad and only allow the good and the positive to come in for the new year.
Yeah. I love all those traditions.
Yeah. People here in Canada don't. In Italy, they're used to it, but you go out in Canada in the middle of the night, banging your pots, one of your neighbors is going to kill you. Yeah. One of your neighbors going to come out and just box you. Yeah. But it's very popular
not a team
in
player. The neighbor. No.
Yeah.
So as we're getting a little bit closer to the end of the show now, what do you have coming up, love? I know you were mentioning the last time that you were working on some books, or do you have anything near completion? What do you?
I've got a book on. It's an almanac of witches and sorcerers through.
Ooh, sounds like a good Halloween for your Halloween.
Exactly. It's still publishers. It's definitely going ahead because they've paid me the second half of my advance, so it's definitely on.
Yeah, it's yours. It's yours, Charles. We're looking forward to it.
So that's coming along. I've got a new edition of my book about Wold Newton. It's been updated and revised, and it will be available. It's called The Mysterious Wold Newton Triangle, and it will be available probably within about the next week on Amazon in both print and digital, and it will be available in the US and the UK. Well, it's just going through the system at the moment.
And that's on your website, correct? Because we put the details right on the YouTube page, right in the links, so people can see them.
It'll be on the website with the links to the Amazon pages when it goes live. But I say that's imminent. That's in the hands of the great God Jeff Bezos, so we'll have to wait and see. Exactly.
Well then.
Yes.
Yes.
In with his phallic rocket ship. Yes.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, maybe we'll just take your book to Mars.
Send one to Mars.
Something to find moving forward.
So that's that. Then I've got a couple of other book projects that are currently in talks and haven't got any further yet, but there'll be more coming out next year on those as well.
Well, it's very exciting.
That's what I'm doing. So I'm very pleased how it's going. And
oh, absolutely. Well, we're happy because we've got you back in October. Let me just check the date for anybody who's listening. It will be October the 5th.
October
the first date in October. Yeah. I see witches and sorcerers and all kinds of, like we talk, that'll blend right in. Haunted tales.
Yep. Brilliant. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for joining us. This will be airing this evening, and you will be able to go, of course, to any of the YouTube pages, or to be on our Facebook page if you want to go in and see all the comments that people will be posting on the live show tonight, and we'll put them up on the screen and such, so you'll have an idea. If you see any questions at that point, then you'll be able to come back and maybe answer them and interact and get people will see the link right in there, because we'll put the link to your website. We'll be there, and we'll mark down the books. I think you have a list of the books that
the books are on the website.
Okay, we'll make sure that is. We'll make sure it's all there.
That's super. Okay, well, as ever, it's been a delight talking to you both. It's
always with you as well. Thank you so much.
That's always a joy. Pleasure. Yes. So thank you, and I will be in touch after the show airs tonight.
Brilliant. Okay then.
All right, darling.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.
Good night. Always a delight. Always a delight. Big thank you to Charles Christian for joining us this evening. Before we go through the traditional sign off, I'm going to play Dolly's other Folgers video. I know. So hang tight. Here it comes.
The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. The best.
Apparently, no.
Well done, Dolly. Who knew?
I know. Isn't that
crooner,
you. She's got two versions. There we go. So we now have 4 to play with. Still waiting for Hamilton Way and Paul Cookson to, show us something. And all of you guys, come on, take on the Folgers Commercials Challenge. Just do up a little ditty, show us a little Folgers, show us your best.
And remind them that they're watching.
Yeah, they do watch the show, actually. And you know what? Millions of people are going to see it. And it sits in the archive. That's right. And it never goes away. So
forever. Folgers forever.
Never know. Maybe you're just that one upcoming Folgers person. Yeah.
Go for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, guys, if you do enjoy, the shows and the content, find the Outer Realm YouTube page, find International Public Radio, UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials, UFO Paranormal, and subscribe, because that means a lot to us, and it just brings other people there. And you should subscribe, but also turn on the notification, because if you do, you'd have been able to catch this show live and have questions for Charles right during. We saw there was a couple people watching, so it's just a little extra something, because all of our guests from overseas, we do pre-record. So you sort of get to see it in advance, just saying. So anyway, we're going to officially sign off. Thank you, to everybody who'll be tuning in tonight. Please note again, Amelia and I will be in chat, and we will put your comments up, and we will do our very best to entertain you all, of course, and we're dang good at it, apparently. So if you'd like to email us, the Outer Realm Contact at gmail.com, the Outer Realm Contact at gmail.com. Tomorrow night, we welcome back Peter Penagore. People love him. His shows do really well. He's just very insightful, very knowledgeable. He's going to pick up where he left off in the last segment, discussing NDEs, after effects of NDEs. Here's something a lot of people don't think about, and maybe different levels of consciousness, things like that. I think it's going to be a pretty deep show. It's going to be live, so you guys will be able to tune in tomorrow night and go ahead and add, your questions and comments. And he's very, very generous with his time in answering them. So, but until then, everybody behave. We will see you in chat tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern. Good night or good day.